Perfect. Thanks, Adam.
Okay. Wow. I can't believe we're here. Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Sharp. I'm absolutely thrilled, honestly, to host you as the convener of this NGFP Intergenerational Fairness Hub. This has been the product of so many meetings and so much thinking and passion from so many people. And I'm going to thank a few people very soon. But first of all, this is a critical issue that really demands all of our attention, our engagement, and our action, and that's why we're here. I'm a youth participation consultant at UNICEF, director of learning at Meta Future School, and I'm a new father. I'm a son and a grandson, and it is in all of those roles that it's my great honor to be with you today and to launch this hub. I'm just going to speak for a little bit, and then I'll tell you a bit more about what we've got in store today. We all know that fairness is a cornerstone of any just society. But as I look around me into the world my son is growing up in, as we look around us, this might be the best time to be alive in human history when it comes to relative wealth and peace, depending on where you are in the world. But we see many instances where fairness is not being upheld, particularly when it comes to the relationship between generations. And I've been working in youth development for over a decade, but it's quite clear to me, and you don't need to be a professional to know that the younger generation is inheriting a world that's in many ways increasingly unequal, where opportunities for education, for employment, for advancement are becoming more limited, where the burden of debt and environmental damage is clearly being passed on to them and to future generations. And this is a situation that we cannot allow to continue, right? And we need to work together to address these challenges to ensure that future generations have the same opportunities that we've had, if not better, and to create a world that is sustainable, just, and fair for all. And I feel like that's why we're all here in this room together, from all over the world. And if that's how you feel, then just share something in the chat or share a little emoji, and we're going to hear from all of you very soon. Intergenerational fairness is not just about morality or ethics. It's not just the right thing to do. It's also a matter of self-interest, right? Like, we all depend on the younger generation to carry on the work we've started, to create a better world for themselves and for us, to support us when we get old into retirement, to solve complex challenges. And it's our responsibility to ensure they have the tools and the resources and the opportunities they need to succeed. And as any father will probably tell you, I feel this responsibility quite deeply. And as someone in Futures and Foresight who primarily works with youth, I feel that responsibility even deeper. So this community of practice that we're all here, that we're all a part of, this is an important step in that direction. I genuinely believe that. This is an impact collective that brings together individuals and organizations from around the world, and we all share a common goal, and that's to create a better future for present and future generations. And I genuinely believe that together we can achieve this. So let's talk briefly about what we're doing today. So welcome to the launch of the IGF Hub. We plan to start as we mean to go on. We're going to do a little introduction. We're going to do a little icebreaker, get to know you all a little bit better. Then we're going to have a presentation by Daria on intergenerational fairness, followed by a facilitated dialogue around 3 important intergenerational fairness questions. This is a safe space where groups can begin to grapple with these quite complex topics together. And then I'll facilitate a foresight process where we'll map the futures of intergenerational fairness. And finally, we'll share next steps. We're going to share a feedback form. We'd love you to contribute, and we'll share with you our plans to co-create this hub with you. But really, this is about harnessing the power of all of our collective knowledge, creativity, and passion to create a better future. And so we're so happy that you're here. This hub is a place where people from all walks of life can come together to share ideas, to collaborate, to create change. And it's a place where we can take action and make a difference in the world. And it will be a place that is shaped by you, by the community itself, but I'll come back to that. For now, let's agree that to come together with strangers and to discuss complex and at times uncomfortable topics, to build the social bonds that we need to create the kind of change we want to create, we need to be really present for the next 90 minutes, to engage fully, to actively listen to each other and to be open to differences in values. If we can't empathize with each other, how on earth can we hope to empathize with generations not yet born? Now, please note that while we have developed a TOR and Abby Noakes is going to drop that into the chat, please do have a read of the TOR that we've developed. Whilst we're clear on our own priorities, we deliberately left it broad and kept the work plan open because we have every intention of co-creating this with you. Our next meeting will be on May 25th, where we'll co-create this whole hub together, defining the work plan, our principles, our governance structure, etc. So please put that in your calendars now. I don't know how you can do that, but I'll remind you at the end of the session. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm confident we have the knowledge, we have passion, we have determination to make a difference, and that starts with the team behind this hub. I really want to thank, just very briefly, Abby, in particular, Director of Networks at SWAF, who's been fundamental to co-creating this hub. To Daya, the Intergenerational Fairness Observatory lead at SWAF, so awesome to work with you, and Passy as well, who's the NGFP Africa Networks Weaver and Hub lead, for sharing all her insights about what makes an effective hub. And someone who is not on this screen and is not with SWAF, but someone who is we're really happy to have in the room, I hope he's in the room, is Felipe Bosch, who works in foresight at the European Commission. He's going to be facilitating a session today with us. We're so thankful to have you. But that's enough for me. I've been talking too long already. I'd like you to share, all of you, take a couple of seconds to share in the chat who you are, where you are, what you do, and one piece of intergenerational wisdom you have received in your life that maybe stayed with you. Could be from a family member, a friend, mentor, a teacher. Just take a couple of minutes to sit and reflect on, your life journey and the wisdoms that have been shared with you, the things that have been passed down. And I just want you to share that in the chat. And then I will open it up and see if anyone would like to turn on their camera and share that with us. We would really appreciate your contribution. So I'm opening up the chat now so I can see. Okay, we have 36 people in the room. That's amazing. Just take a moment. Who you are, where you are, what you do, and one piece of intergenerational wisdom, please. Take a couple of minutes and then we'll open it up. Thank you, Abby, for giving access to the TOR. James, do you want to share verbally with us all? It's so good to have you here, mate. Please say who you are and share with everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for being here. This is a really exciting time to be making this hub. And Adam, I think, communicated really well how pressing and complex the world has become. And that beckons us to do this kind of work. I'm based in Sydney in Australia, and I currently work for the New South Wales Government Office of Energy and Climate Change. So New South Wales is the biggest state in Australia by economic output and population. So we have a really big role domestically, but also on the international stage as well to decarbonise Australia's economy. And so I do a lot of work with circular economy decarbonisation at the moment. My piece of intergenerational advice is that societies thrive and do well when people plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit under. So as in when there are leaders in society and change makers who create the foundations they themselves might not necessarily benefit from, but the next generation will, that's when society does well for itself.
That's beautiful, James. Thank you. That's fantastic. Tshepo, please, we haven't actually met yet, but I've seen you on email threads. Please say hello to Tshepo. We'd love to hear from you. Just in a minute or so, just introduce yourself and please.
Okay. Okay, I'm sweating. I'm not sure. Am I visible? Can you all see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it's very hot where I am. I'm an environmental health practitioner by profession. I recently completed a course on becoming a futurist 101. Adam was part of the mentors there, as well as Professor Sohail Inayatullah. And I'm so excited to be part of this family. Now, one of the intergenerational wisdom that has been received by me, it has to come from, because I'm the first environmental health practitioner to be working at a hospital. The CEO that I work for, she usually says to me, half a loaf is better than no bread. Meaning you can do better with whatever that you receive, whatever opportunities that come, do your best. God will do the rest, if I can say so. So I'm so thankful to be here. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to also to be joining this group. I don't know what am I going to achieve out of this, but I'm hopeful that I'm going to achieve the better of myself, of the profession, and of this community as well. Thank you.
That's magic. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone. We're really happy to have you. Please do turn on your mute if you're not speaking. I'd like to open it up now. Would anyone like to share? We've had some wonderful shares in the chat from people all over the world. Would anyone like to turn off their mute and share with the group? It's lovely for us to all know who's in the room and who we're getting a chance to learn from and partner with.
I won't let you wait any longer. Hello, Adam. Hello,
Thank
Abby,
you.
James Housen. So I'm a crisis management expert and foresight practitioner based in Istanbul. What I do, and I've been in foresight for on and off 12 years, but it has not been on a full continuum. First of all, before I share the wisdom that I've experienced, I would say emphasize the importance of IGF, because it is about human security. It is about overcoming prejudices and certain mental blockages. So that's going to gradually change it to a completely different world as opposed to the current world we are living in right now. So it's, I guess, conflict resolution, de-escalation has such dimensions. My family grew up in a hyper multicultural neighborhood where there were three religions and they were all going to each other's ceremony. So, they had a very busy calendar. And I wasn't taught anything about this is a Jew or this is a Christian or anything like that. Whatever I've learned was through school and peers that helped me to have an open mind. And also some of our best friends are Armenian, that I would trust with completely closed eyes. That's it. I won't take too much of your time. Over, and very glad to be here. And hello, Abby, as well. Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you, and great to just see so much diversity in the room, right? There are so many wonderful answers here in the chat. Fash, I see you just dropped in. Great to see you. I mean, I don't know if you could see what's going on in the chat here, but just take a moment to read what's being shared here from all over the world. People from all different backgrounds sharing the wisdoms that have influenced their lives. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. And we're going to capture all of this. I think we're starting as we mean to go on, meaning this isn't the last time we're going to hear from you. Actually, a considerable portion of today's session is going to be spent in dialogue together, talking through some of the big questions on our minds as we think more deeply about intergenerational fairness. But thank you so much to everyone who just shared, and looking forward to hearing from you shortly as well. So let's move to the next step in the agenda. I'm going to keep reading here. Understanding intergenerational fairness. Now, recognizing that we have a room full of diversity of understanding about intergenerational fairness, we wanted to dedicate a bit of time to speak to this issue, to maybe cover broadly maybe some of the philosophical perspectives, but then also what does this look like in practice? So we're all on the same page. But we're also going to be asking you some questions because we want to capture your knowledge and your wisdom too. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Daria, who's going to take us through a presentation on intergenerational fairness. Daria, go ahead, over to you.
Thank you so much, Adam. Could you please go one slide back, though?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here. I mean, wow, I've been working on intergenerational fairness at the School of International Futures for over 2 years. And it's just amazing to see the commitment and kind of that you've given to this hub. So I'm really excited. I'm truly inspired by your contributions that you've shared in the chat. A little bit better. So I will share a bit about what I've learned about some kind of what we do. I will also kind of pause and ask you a couple of questions. So I hope that you won't be shy. I'm just pausing because I got a message that my Wi-Fi is unstable. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little bit patchy, but I think we can hear you good enough. Thanks, Daria.
Okay, thank you. Let me know and I will try to do something if it gets unbearable. So I feel like I should also follow Adam's shoes and perhaps share something personal that brings me to the topic of intergenerational fairness. Whilst I'm not a mom, I am living in a very rural area of Slovenia with the aim where I moved like around a year ago with the aim to become as much self-sustainable as possible. So kind of living amidst a lot of farmers, trying to do a bit of farming and growing some vegetables myself as well, and just really enjoying the that it has to offer and kind of preserving that and doing what we can to contribute to that is really high on my agenda. Today, I'll be focusing on what intergenerational fairness is, why it matters, as well as a bit of a more broader conversation policy making. But before we get into that, I would just like to pause and ask you if you could please share in the chat what comes to mind when you hear intergenerational fairness. So basically, I'm asking you, yes, thank you. If you could just share any keywords, any definitions, I don't know, key concerns relating to intergenerational fairness, that would be amazing. Amazing. Shared responsibility, fair treatment for all generations, developing society for future, trying to be more open, communicating with past generations. I mean, these are all really amazing answers, and these are kind of helping me to also see where you're at with your thinking. Fantastic. Adam, would you show us next slide? Thank you. So I think that you were all very close to kind of how we understand and define intergenerational fairness. Basically, we can say that it can be kind of traced back to the Bertland Report on sustainable development, and it can be defined as a way to negotiate the needs of people alive today, as well as those who will live in the future, as well as believing that if people can meet their needs, society will experience less conflict and more harmony, and understanding that fairness and achieving fairness also requires identifying unfairness where it happens so that it can be resolved, and that really relates. I think intergenerational fairness principles into decision-making in the chat. We have a diagram on the right side of the slide, which is from the book called The Good Ancestor by Roman Krznaric, and he basically shows that by looking 50,000 years into the future and then 50,000 years into the past, assuming that the 21st century's birth rate remains constant, all human lives are far outweighed by those yet to come. That's just a little bit to kind of add to the relevance of focusing and doing something about these issues. And I would like to add that importantly, intergenerational fairness, thank you, Abby, intergenerational fairness really isn't just about meeting the needs of a specific generation or an age group, but all generations experience unfairness in different ways and all with serious consequences. So it's about coming together, it's about having a dialogue and trying to kind of distribute the available resources to make sure that as many needs of different generations are being met as possible. I have another question for you. If you could please share in the chat if you can think of anything that you'd like to thank your ancestors for leaving. So it might not be a thing that's currently jeopardized for future generations. It might be something, but I think that it would be great to hear from you. What is the thing that you would like to thank your ancestors for leaving you? I think for me, for Slovenia, it would definitely be all of those springs of drinkable water and lakes with pure water where we can still swim in. I like that you're taking a more philosophical approach and talking about values and thanking your ancestors for leaving you values. Let's work on preserving those indeed. So just quickly, intergenerational equity has also been climbing up the priority ladder for policymakers. There are many different examples, but a couple of the most prominent ones are it has been enshrined in the UN documents, United Nations documents, pretty much from the start, but especially since last year with the development of our common agenda, where the Director Secretary has specifically called that all actions to respond to future generations. There is growing number of future generations commissioners. The German Supreme Court judges call not to harm rights for future generations since 2021. And lastly, or the most recent development, intergenerational parliamentary commissions was set up by a new government in Australia. If we could go to the next, thank you. Yes, to the next slide, please. Thank you. So basically, that was just to say that if we talk to most decision makers, they're going to agree with the importance of intergenerational fairness. However, there are several barriers that stand in the way of actually doing something about it and putting it into practice. Next slide, please. Basically, our research in Portugal with the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation has shown that there are two significant kind of barriers standing in the way. And one of them is the data gap, which basically stands for the fact that there just isn't enough reliable as well as comprehensive information about the long-term impacts of most policies necessary to make fair decisions. And also the impacts, the focus tends to be too narrow. The impacts are often in adjacent fields. So we can be, for example, talking about or developing a new policy that is going to deal with housing, but then the impacts can be in the domain of families or so on, which a different kind of a department and policies would deal with. And then, or jobs or whatever. And then the second barrier is that future generations don't have a vote, that we're all very aware of. So their interests are not heard. There just isn't anyone who's going to hold up a phone and kind of lobby a politician in favor of future generations. Next slide, please. And doing something about intergenerational fairness was really a challenge that was presented to us by Foundation Calouste Gulbenkian in Portugal. And the reason is that Portugal has an aging population. So, for example, 200,000 Portuguese were born annually in the 60s, and now there are only 80,000. And whilst we were doing the research with them, we've basically identified that there are issues regarding housing, the environment, and pensions that are really pressing in Portugal, and that something really urgently had to be done. But basically the question was, how can we address these two barriers and gaps that I just mentioned earlier? And we kind of tackled that by developing, thank you, Abby, again for sharing the link, by developing intergenerational fairness framework for policy assessment. And it has three specific kind of elements that you can see in the diagram on the side. Basically, a true international dialogue supported by foresight and data. That's earlier. This kind of decisions cannot be technocratic, but there needs to be a conversation between different people, different age groups from our society in order to ensure that everyone's interests are being heard. Then we have the policy assessment tool to support decisions, as well as drive transparency, accountability. And finally, institutional ownership, and basically a focus to kind of build institutional capacity, for example, similar to what our common agenda kind of is doing. And on the right side of the slide, I've just shared kind of 5 assessment questions that are core to the framework and that kind of assess policies to overcome the 2 barriers. So the first one is, does the society move, does a policy, move society away from its vision for the future? The idea is here that different generations are going to have different views on this, so we need to have a conversation about it. Second question, does the policy disadvantage any generations alive now or in the future? We need to explore the impacts across short, medium, as well as long-term implications. And in order to do that, we need a combination of qualitative as well as quantitative data. And the policy assessment tool that I've mentioned kind of guides the assessor through assessing implications based on short, medium, and long-term implications. Third question, does the policy disadvantage people at any specific life stages? This is really powerful because people are going to have different kind of concerns and needs depending on where they are at in their lives. So it's going to be different whether you're a student, whether you're, a pregnant woman, whether you're a 55-year-old person with limited mobility. Fourth question, does the policy strengthen the transmission of inequality through generations? How is privilege getting passed by? And then finally, does the policy restrict the choices of future generations? So whilst we can do our best to try to kind of think and include the concerns of future generations in our decisions, we still kind of need to design the policies in a way that future generations, once they do actually have a vote, are able to amend to really fit their needs. Perfect. Next slide, please. This is just to say that basically there are other examples of how intergenerational equity is also being used internationally to kind of drive change. I would just like to say that based on the work that we've been doing and based on the research that we've been conducting that goes into this, that this is really, impacting a policy system to ensure that there is really a behavioral change that leads to more and change in policies that leads to more intergenerationally fair decisions and behavior is really requires the system to be impacted in those 3 areas within a policy system as well as outside. And so with that, I won't really talk much more about other examples, but I would just like to close by actually asking you again to come and share in the chat about kind of what context have you seen intergenerational fairness or equity being talked about? Or, for example, which organizations, institutions have you seen define and talk about it? And with that, I'll be following your answers And hope to see you later in the breakouts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Daria, for that presentation. It's cool that, you know, we have to talk about the philosophical side, you know, which is and the morality side of this, which is future people count, right? And there's potentially going to be a huge amount of them, way more than have been alive already, and they're completely disenfranchised. And so how does our actions affect them? And there are some key questions around that we're going to discuss shortly. But then there's the whole practice of intergenerational fairness and where that is around the world. And it's cool that, you know, SWAF is sort of, you know, out there working with Gulbenkian trying to figure this out. And I'm sure some of you are trying to figure it out as well, in your lives, in your professional lives. So we're excited to hear directly from you. So we have an example here from Raisa from Turtle Island, Canada. Sorry. Conversations around intergenerational fairness are coming up mostly due to Indigenous worldviews around the 7 generations principle, right? So inspiration from Indigenous worldviews and governance, it's coming up. Thank you so much to Shepo. In the context of health, healthcare without harm addresses IGF within its policies and strategies. Okay, fantastic. Any other examples? We'd love to hear how this is showing up for you. Agata, thanking Daria. Yeah, it's an awesome presentation. Generation Climate Europe works on intergenerational justice in the context of EU environmental and climate policy. Youth-driven work. Fascinating. This is why we need to get you all talking, because we have so much to learn from you as well. So please do share any more of that in the comments. We need to move on to the next step, because now we'd like to get you talking. Now, a big priority for this hub, certainly in our initial thinking, was to create a safe space for us to really grapple with big questions. And because often, you know, we hear about intergenerational fairness, we see the presentation, but rarely do we have a chance to actually talk about what it means and to hear divergent opinions, right? And that can be anxiety producing for some people. And I completely appreciate that. And so you have no pressure to talk at all. But we just want to create the space and encourage each other by, you know, really showing empathy and being humble to really hear from everyone. So what we want to do is create 3 breakout rooms, each with their own question, and send you off for like 20 minutes and then have you come back and share some of the insights that you guys talked through. So it's a real chat, you know, we're just having a real conversation. So 3 rooms and 3 questions. In group 1, and this will be facilitated by Daria, who you just heard from, the question is, what responsibilities do we have to future generations? And how can we ensure that our actions today contribute to a fair and sustainable future for all? So one group is going to grapple with that question for 20 minutes. Group 2, facilitated by Passy. Give us a wave, Passy. The question is, how can we foster greater empathy and understanding between different generations to promote intergenerational fairness in decision-making processes? So a very different question around how to foster empathy and understanding. And group 3, that will be facilitated by Felipe from the European Commission. Give us a wave, Felipe. This question is, what can we learn from the past and how can we use that knowledge to inform our decisions and actions today to promote a fairer future for all generations? Now, you don't need to be an expert in these topics. You're a concerned citizen. So share honestly how you feel, and let's send you off for 20 minutes to have these conversations. Now, you can share your insights in a Jamboard. You don't have to, though. You can just share and the facilitator will scribe for you. But they have this link. The link has just been posted in the chat. Thank you, Abby. Just turn to your group page and you can add sticky notes. It's really simple. Add sticky notes, but you don't have to. The facilitator will do it for you. Okay, but some people really like to just, you know, type and grapple and play. So we wanted to open that up to you. So we're going to go out for 20 minutes. And please feel free to introduce yourselves quickly. at the start of the session. Enjoy your conversations. We don't get to do this often. Enjoy your conversations, and we'll see you shortly. Okay, we have this David Achodo, who keeps seemingly keeps dropping out.
Struggling.
He keeps popping in and popping out, maybe?
Yeah. Let me.
Oh, why has this happened? Oh.
I've allocated to him to a group, so.
Maybe David is struggling with connection issues or something?
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah. David, can you hear us? Are you there, David?
Oh goodness, I'm going to pause the recording.
Okay. Welcome, Black. Please turn on mute if you're not speaking. So I hear you've had some very interesting conversations packed with insights and debate, which is awesome to hear. So we have a few minutes. I'd love to hear from each group. If one person could volunteer from group one, I've got your Jamboard up here. Bravo. Yeah, looking like you know, some abstract art or something. So this is group one with Daya, and this was the question: what responsibilities do we have to future generations, and how can we ensure our actions today contribute to a fair and sustainable future for all? I'm assuming Luna and Ruby, you'd like to present, and maybe, you know, we don't have that long. Maybe what were the central? Was there a debate? What was the central conversation centered around? Like, any key insights for you? What stood out to you?
I think it was mostly thinking about the previous generation and what they left us, and then what can we leave the future generation, and kind of mostly centered around land, access to basic rights, and dealing with being born in one place and then moving to another place, and the stories that you carry as such. If it's a bit of, yeah, I don't know if it's understandable. That's the biggest summary I can make.
No, that's great. And are you Luna or Ruby?
Luna. This is Ruby.
Hi, Ruby.
Okay. Hello, Ruby. Was there anything that stood out for you about the conversation? Were you all in agreement, or were there any differences in opinion, or anything that just stood out to you?
I think there was a small disagreement near the end of our talk about the older generation. And we mentioned at some point in the beginning, like, we're going to see the biggest transfer of intergenerational wealth as the baby boomers get older, and that inheritance transfers to a different generation. But then about the inequality of that, and also some people were saying maybe that we weren't providing them the care they deserve in old age, while we were saying like and how much they sacrificed in post World War II. And then like thinking about, well, is that a sacrifice, or are we witnessing something else, like inequality as a result of this mass wealth accumulation? And I think a lot of what we talked about actually has its root in wealth accumulation.
That's fascinating.
And how it's not distributed equally.
Right. And how fairness goes both ways.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to each other. That sounds fascinating. Let's go to the next group. This question, this room was facilitated by Passy. Thank you so much, Luna and Ruby. How can we foster greater empathy and understanding between different generations? It sounds like group one were grappling with that very question as well. Would anyone like to share just in a minute or so? Were there any central thrust of the conversation, or any disagreements? What stood out to you? Anyone from group 2 like to volunteer just quickly and say a minute or so to share any insights you have? Come on, Passy, I'm going to call on you.
No, I was trying to give opportunity to group members to
That's okay. You take it. You grab it with both hands. Go ahead.
Okay, great, perfect. So there were very interesting contributions. So we didn't have an argument per se or things to disagree upon, but it was mostly contributing solutions towards finding greater empathy and understanding towards IGF in decision-making processes. I think what came out very strongly was thinking through equal access opportunities in terms of fairness towards different generations. And specific sectors were brought to the fore. One of it was digital divide across different generations, and how can we ensure that decision-making happening in the tech digital space ensure accessibility and usability of these new generation technologies for all generations possible. There was also an interesting question that came up from one of our members, which was, is this question framed under the assumption that there is no empathy and understanding? And towards answering that question, he mentioned, it was Isaiah, he mentioned that the agricultural sector actually shows a lot of empathy and understanding, where people are actually coming together to share resources, share water, collective farming opportunities. He gave a couple of examples, which was under sharing water, not just with human beings across different generations, but also with animals and livestock. And that was he was trying to give a very interesting example of how empathy and understanding is shown, not just for the current challenge in that sector, but also thinking long-term for future generations. And then if I'm going to conclude, I have to mention the health sector also came up in the conversation on how decision-making in the healthcare space is thinking about future pandemics and how are we preparing for that, having learned from COVID-19 and how the pandemic affected different generations, older, younger, and even how we're thinking about future ones. And I think the one thing that brought this conversation together was shares around learning from history and experiences and coming together in conversation and dialogue towards finding collective solutions together, and the power of listening. Because when you listen to people's experiences and struggles across different contexts, then there is a way of finding empathy and understanding. But if you don't know the story, then where do you derive empathy and understanding towards a decision-making process that is worthy? And I conclude by saying that the climate space, in terms of a good example of where future generations are being involved in the conversation, has been really opening up to future generations that need to foster that greater empathy for the younger people who will be leaders in the future in that space, but also in every other sector. I conclude there. Thanks, Adam.
That's fascinating, Passy. And I think, I hope that through these conversations, we're not only sort of, opening ourselves up to new perspectives and insights, but also maybe identifying some areas where this hub could focus. The conversation around the role of healthcare, so crucial, the place of intergenerational fairness in climate, so crucial, the changing demographics and how that will transform technology. Would you like to see this hub focus on some of these specific issues, and for us to come together to use foresight methods and tools to do real research on these topics? Something to consider, right, as we imagine where this hub can go in the future. That's perfect. And we have 1 minute for the last group, for Felipe's group. Would anyone in a minute like to maybe just condense down that very detailed conversation? And please, the participants, you can share in the chat too, okay? But would anyone like to just give that brief overview of what your conversation centered on? And I'm so glad we did create this Jamboard, because we have all this data that you've shared. So we're going to try not to miss anything. Would anyone like to share something? Anyone who maybe hasn't said anything yet?
I think I could volunteer.
Great. Go ahead, Iman.
Okay. So our group had a very interesting conversation about what we can learn from the past. Definitely a major emphasis on how we can learn from the past mistakes, what negative things have affected the present that we can learn from and not repeat the mistakes that they made. We also talked about issues around mistakes in tech, mistakes in the healthcare, like Pasi mentioned, around COVID, mistakes in exploitation of natural resources to the point of biodiversity loss. And then James mentioned the futures triangle and how we can use that in decision making, as well as we talked about path dependencies and pattern recognition to make sure that we don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. We talked about how we can learn from how we treated each other in the past. So human interactions to make sure we do things better this time, get it right in the first place, build systems from the ground up that work for everybody and are not just emphasizing situations where there's no equity in terms of our interactions. We talked about defining timeframes of how far we go into the past. So how much do you go in terms of time frames when you're trying to create a frame of mind when making decisions, and then using that time frame to make stories and to create because stories, like again, like was mentioned by the previous group, stories are the easiest way to get people to empathize and to relate to these things that happened in the past that they may not understand. We also talked about two things that I just want to mention about political issues. Young people and children usually don't have a chance to vote because of the voting age. Sometimes in places like Argentina, that was mentioned, is 16, some places 18. And so they don't get to have a vote. Literally, they don't have a voice, but at the same time, these political decisions will affect them. So how do they get a voice without having the right to vote? And then lastly, we talked about the metrics, which is a very important thing that was brought up. What are the metrics for ensuring that you have intergenerational equity? Who decides them? How do we arrive at them? Who sets up the system? Those are very interesting questions that were asked in our group. And we definitely could have used a bit more time to talk about that more because it was a very interesting trajectory. But yeah, I think we had a very interesting conversation. Thank you.
That's fascinating. There's so much to bring up. Thank you, Housen, for sharing in the chat. You know, talking about learning from city design and the relationship between youth and other generations in the past. And this idea of voting and different disenfranchisement. There's a wonderful case study in the book, The Good Ancestor, which Daria mentioned earlier, where there was a campaign where parents were giving their votes to their kids. And sitting them down, explaining what was happening, explaining the different candidates and saying, right, who do you want me to vote for? This sort of, that and lowering the voting age to ensure there's more inclusion could create some meaningful change. And who knows, maybe that's something that we might work together to campaign on and drive. It'll be up to you. Great, so thank you so much to everyone for sharing. Big round of applause to you. So we're running a bit late. We wanted about 20 minutes for this next exercise, but we can do it quickly. So I feel like we can do it. And if we don't finish it, this is not a static document. This is not a static tool. We can keep working on this. Okay, so we're going to use a foresight method. And James actually mentioned it. This is something that we can use in decision making. And the reason why this is such a great tool, created initially by Sahel Imiatullah, is he emphasized the future is uncertain. And there's this space where many different futures are possible, but it doesn't exist. There's not just one force exerting influence on it. There are multiple forces influencing and shaping the future. There's pulls of the future that's attracting us, that's driving us, that's luring us forward. Then there's pushes, drivers in the present that are encouraging us to move in that direction. And then there are weights of history, systems that hold us back, that prevent us from getting where we wish to go. What we wanted to do just briefly in this first launch session was to map out the future using the triangle, the future of intergenerational fairness, okay? So maybe we want to create a map towards the future that we want in 2050 for intergenerational fairness, okay? So let's run with this. It's using the same Jamboard, okay? Let's not make perfect the enemy of good. We're going to do this relatively quickly and just have fun with it and see where we end up. Is everyone up for that? Little thumbs up, little let's go. So we're going to try and do this in about 10 minutes, okay? It's possible. Anything's possible. Right, we're going to start with the pulls of the future, okay? Which is the top of the triangle here. What we want to do is share what our preferred vision for the future is for intergenerational fairness. Okay, so you've talked a lot about where we are now, you know, maybe where there's unfairness in so much of our society. What does a intergenerationally fair future look like? It could be around climate, it could be around technology, it could be in the policy environment, it could be the opportunities that are now open to young people, it could be in our cities. I don't mind, whatever it means to you. At the top of this triangle, see, here we go, climate justice, great start. So at the top of this triangle, I want you to create a compelling vision of the future for me. Now, for those of you who are visually, inclined artists, you can also bring in images from Google on this little sidebar here. So if you, ideally, the future should be an image, something compelling that excites us, that draws us. But don't worry, just share some data. What does the pull of the future look like for you? A positive image of the future you'd like this hub to hopefully have an impact and help create. So climate justice, meritocracy, not seniority. So that means, a truly meritocratic society, primarily based on hard work, fairness, right, rather than privilege. Efficient, smart, and thoughtful use of resources. This is a great start. Just take a moment, and if you don't want to use the Jamboard, just share in the chat, and I'm hoping that Abby will scribe for you. Oh, okay. Okay, we have one image. Responsible digital and technological transformation. Beautiful. Okay, this futures triangle is waking up. It's growing. It's growing branches. It's growing leaves. It's bearing fruit. Fair wealth distribution. And don't worry, we're not going into too much detail right now. We're just creating a map, and we might not align on the preferred future. Like that might be something for another time. We might not all be clearly aligned on what we wish to create, but we still want to hear from all of you. Desirable use of resources, intergenerational councils that make policy decisions together. Fantastic. So, that's about structure, systems. Tishepo shares in the chat, decarbonized healthcare, beautiful. House and space for learning and empathy. Okay, and we're obviously gonna be working on our preferred future for intergenerational fairness a lot with this hub. So this is our first try. Ethical AI, ethical artificial intelligence. There's this AI arms race going on right now with billions of dollars being poured into this technology. And this is that one time, that plastic moment, if you will, where we can actually influence the trajectory of this technology before it's too late. And the issue with AI is if it's too late, the consequences could be devastating for present and future generations. So this is a crucial topic that maybe you want this hub to focus on. Maybe you want us to campaign to advocate for change in this particular area. Okay, all right, I'm going to stop you because otherwise there won't be any space for any of the other corners. Thank you. House and mangrove trees as an image, beautiful. Okay, so now we have a few things that we like, that we want to create in this future. We have quite a lot. Stop sharing, otherwise there'll be no space. All right, what's driving us towards this future? What's driving you to want to create this future? Now, this is the pushes of the present in the bottom left-hand corner, okay? These are drivers. You've heard a few drivers today. For example, there are advocacy movements, like effective climate justice movements. This is a driver that's shifting public consciousness and pushing us to create change. What are some drivers in the present? And maybe you could speak to your own perspective, your own experience. And you're going to put these in the bottom left-hand corner of the triangle. Climate change, absolutely. So Tishepo shares climate change, huge driver. IPCC reports, clear and present danger, and the forecasts do not look good. Resisting automation, interesting. Okay, so fear around digital disruption, potentially displacing people's jobs. This is certainly relevant in the artificial intelligence conversation, but technology has been driving this change for a long, long time. Economic instability, yes. We're seeing that new generations are less well off than their parents for the first time in history. Demand for universal basic universal income. Great, so these new ideas, new models are emerging that have got people thinking about change, and it's driving us to really question, you know, what is the current state of affairs, and what might a new system look like? Profit-centered economy, AI getting more powerful, ChatGPT-4, lack of affordable housing. Okay, this is great. All right, stop there. This is already fantastic. Okay, stop. You guys are so fast. Okay, we want to buy a house before we die. Exactly, like, come on. These sorts of emojis are absolutely welcome, okay? Absolutely welcome. Okay, right, so, you know, what is my future? You know, what kind of future do I have if I don't have economic security? Okay, all right, now let's look at the weights of the past. So we have some really compelling drivers here. The drivers are really strong. Now, what about the weights? What is holding us back from achieving our preferred future? These are often the systems that preserve the status quo, that prevent change. They're not just systems, they can also be cultures, institutional cultures, neoliberalism, economic and power concentration. So the rising inequality is shifting politics, transforming politics. Wow, this board is clustered. Abby, help. It's driving me insane. I'm losing my mind. Can we like make these ones small, the pushes? Yeah, let's try and make the pushes small. And if anyone else is in this thing creating data, please make yours a little bit smaller so we can see everything. This is great. Entrenched inequities in the agricultural system, preventing affordable and healthy diets. Fantastic. Neo-colonialism. Power dynamics and privilege, economic power structures, unequal access to opportunities, short-term thinking and policy making, short-termism, absolutely. Concentration of power in the hands of the older generation. Shadi, you sent me, Shadi, I'm sorry, I have to call you out. Shadi just sent me a direct message saying she wants 2 houses. You don't even have 1 yet, but I do like your ambition. Sorry, I called you out. That was a DM. Okay, all right. So that now we don't just one day, Shadi. Okay, so we don't just want to stop there. Okay, right. Well, we do want to stop there. Stop scribing. Stop it. It's too much. It's too much. It's too fast. It's too much information. Okay. Now we don't just populate the triangle. Okay. What we want to do here is capture insights from this. So my question to you is, like, so what? So what can we do as a hub on the basis of this initial map of the future? It's not static, we'll come back to it, we'll refine it, but what can we actually do to address some of the insights here? Can we, and I want you to share in the chat now, can we lighten any of these weights? Can we lighten them at all? Through education, through advocacy, through innovation? Is there an image of the future that maybe we need to communicate more about? Do we need to enroll more people in a vision of the future? James says social enterprises. Let's go, thank you. Let's let young people make more decisions. How can we do that, Iman? Are we campaigning to lowering the voting age? Or is this about education and programs like engaging young people in foresight and intergenerational fairness? What are some insights for you? And I'm going to start reading the chat. What can this hub possibly focus on and do? James says democratizing education. I'm all for that. Bezir, identify and get admission of problem that needs to be solved by political structures. Right, so giving a platform, raising awareness, maybe there's a lot that we can do around that. Critical thinking, Bezir. Decolonial education, Luna and Ruby. What could this, so what could a hub like this, a community of practice, a golden community, a global community of practice do? based on some of these insights. Shadi says, waiting for the old people who don't listen to die, and teaming with those who support us in policy making while accessing decision-making spaces through research and data collection. In fairness to Shadi, she wasn't here for the early part of the session when we talked about empathy. I mean, she only came in like while you were in breakout rooms, so it's not really fair to hold her to the same standard as everyone else. Shadi, I just gave you a get out of jail free card there, okay? By the way, Shadi is an Iranian peace builder who is absolutely incredible champion for peace and youth empowerment. So I'm so glad you're here, but I will make fun of you. Racer, I think change needs to happen at various scales, ensuring youth are given a real voice in local governance and also supporting adults in making their voices heard. Yes. Education and new narratives, more empathy. Ndiapo from South Africa, so glad to have you here. Increase visibility of youth leaders, i.e. normalize youth as sound decision makers. Okay. Felipe, network weaving, connecting dots, creating new spaces. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. So there's a lot that can be achieved in a very short period of time when you have such collective wisdom in the room and people that are really engaged. Like, I really want to thank you all for that engagement. Like, this hub, we always saw this as a collaborative space where we can work together, to provide feedback on each other's projects, where we can support one another, where we can collaborate and create new products and possibilities together. And part of that is about fostering this kind of environment right here. And I don't know if you feel like, you know, we're fostering something here, but I certainly do. This has been a real lightning session, and we're only a minute over time now. But thank you all. I'm going to hand over now, and I'm going to share screen again, Abby. But if you enjoyed that session, if you enjoyed that, please share in the chat. You know, if you enjoyed that Futures Triangle. We did it quite quickly, eh? So let me just go to slideshow. Can you see my screen, Abby?
Yeah, I can do.
Thank you. Take it away.
Brill, thank you. And huge thanks, Adam. Goodness, you've done a phenomenal job, really. This has been a really exciting conversation, and the momentum that you've generated in literally a couple of weeks around this is really inspirational, and so pleased that we've managed to get so many people across different countries and different networks and different spaces together. And from my perspective, this is what it's about. It's about not doing necessarily replicating or doing new things as much as bringing people together and bringing networks together, and collaborating and supporting each other's existing efforts in this space as well. So thank you. We just wanted to share with you a couple of really practical next steps, because we know it's sometimes frustrating to go away from these really generative conversations and think, what was this for? So Adam, if you could just jump to the next slide. There are 4 things that we wanted to share with you. The first is that we are hoping to sense make from the chat conversations, from the recording, from what's gone on the Jamboard, from all of the many ideas that you had in your breakout groups and what weren't able to share today just because of time, and have a co-creation session, which is essentially the point when we start to think about how do we converge and make choices and prioritize what we can potentially do together. We've put a provisional time in as 11 to 12:30 UK time on the 24th of May, just so that we can be really practical about that. So please put that in your diaries, yeah, let us know if you want to come along, and we'll make sure you've got all the information. We'd love you to join as a hub member. What does this mean? It means actually accessing more learning opportunities, practical collaboration opportunities, work with others on projects, find those people that are very like-minded, that are working on, or not necessarily like-minded, I shouldn't just be promoting that, but working on similar issues, and will help to broker connection and form relationships there. And then the third piece around the hub is to be part of either the organising team, so to join me, Adam, Passy, Daria, and I think we've got another one already within Felipe, so thanks Felipe for joining us in the last couple of days, or a steering committee if you like the idea of not necessarily being practically involved but helping to advise on the direction of this over the next 12 months. We're welcoming all of you in those different ways. And we will be sharing a link in the chat. Adam, maybe you could share the form in the chat where you'll have a chance to share your email, share which of those you want to be involved in, and we will follow up accordingly. The last way to get involved is that, which we haven't spent too much talking about this, but this IGF Hub sits as a part of a broader network called the Next Generation Foresight Practitioners Network. It's a network that Adam is part of. You heard from Iman's part of it. You heard from Fisayo earlier. There are many people actually on this call who are members of that broader network. And this hub sits alongside a number of hubs, including a climate hub, a digital futures hub, a health hub, a peace building hub. So there are different sectors that are convening within that broader network. There is an opportunity to become part of that network more formally. So you can join the hub anyway, but if you want also to access more resources, more support, more mentorship, some financial resources, some learning opportunities that go outside of the hub and support the futures and foresight work that you're doing, then we do have a fellowship application open at the moment. It's open until the 2nd of June. I'll put the application link into the chat, or actually maybe Katie, if we've got you on the call, perfect. We've got the application link into the chat, and we've also, if you want to hear a bit more about that, because I don't want to spend too much airtime on that now, we've got a Q&A session with some of our team members and some of our judges next Tuesday, and I'll just pull up as well the link for that. So if you wanted to come along and hear a bit more about the fellowship and ask any questions you have, including what does a good application look like and what are you looking for and who's judging this, then here is the Eventbrite to sign up for that as well. So yeah, I will pause there and hand back to you, Adam, to close us out if there's anything else you wanted to share in this final minute. But huge thanks to all of you for coming, and particularly you, Adam, for doing a phenomenal job.
Oh, you're a star. Thank you so much, Abby. Please do complete the feedback form like right after this, just to find out about this session. This is co-creation and it all starts here. If anyone's thinking about applying for the NGFP, I applied last year and was honored to win the Intergenerational Fairness Award for a game design around population decline and aging societies. And the support that I got from SWAF has just been amazing for this last year. And so if anyone's thinking about it, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy if there's a few of you to do a session directly with you to talk through potential projects, how to write a good application, and to support you in that work, because it's amazing. It's really worthwhile. Please do this feedback form. We're on time. Thank you to Abby, to Felipe, to Daria, to Passy, and to all of you for sharing. And we hope to see you on May 24th. Co-create this hub with us, and let's build something amazing and create a better future for everyone, for present and future generations. Take care. All our love. Bye-bye. Thank you. Keep in touch.
Bye-bye. Thank you.